The night Adi's MBA gave away her last piece of bread, she had not eaten since 6 in the morning. It was 11:45 at night. She had been on her delivery bicycle for 14 hours. Her legs ached. Her back hurt. The sole of her left shoe had been separating from the upper since Tuesday, and she had tied it together with a rubber band she found on the road. She had made 11 deliveries that day. Her earnings for those 11 deliveries, after the company deducted fuel costs, platform fees, and the penalty for one late delivery that had not been her fault, came to 1,800 naira. 1,800 naira. For 14 hours of work. She had stopped at a roadside kiosk on her way home and spent 300 of that on one bread roll and a small bottle of water. Because that was what 300 naira bought. She was eating as she walked her bicycle down the quiet street near her rented room when she saw him. He was sitting against a wall at the corner of the road. Old. Very old. Thin in the way that people get when they have not eaten properly in a very long time. His clothes were layered, 3 thin shirts on top of each other, the way people dress when they have no blanket. His feet were bare. He was not begging. He was not holding out his hand. He was simply sitting there, looking at the ground, with the specific stillness of a person who has stopped expecting anything from the world. Adi stopped. She looked at the bread in her hand. She looked at the old man. She looked at the bread again. She had not eaten since 6 in the morning. She sat down beside him. "Baba," she said softly. He looked up. His eyes were clear. Old and tired, but clear. And kind, even now. Even in whatever circumstances had brought him to this corner. She held out the bread. "Please eat," she said. He looked at it. He looked at her. He saw the delivery uniform. The worn shoe. The tiredness in her face. "You are hungry too," he said. His voice was quiet, hoarse. "I will eat when I get home," she said. This was not true. There was nothing at home to eat. But she said it anyway, the way you say things when you want someone to accept something without the weight of guilt. The old man looked at her for a long moment. Then he took the bread. He ate slowly. She sat beside him and drank her water. They did not talk much. He asked her name. She told him. She asked if he had family nearby. He said nothing that answered the question, which was its own kind of answer. When he finished, he folded the small paper bag the bread had come in and set it neatly beside him. "God will remember you," he said quietly. "For this." She smiled. "Rest well, Baba." She stood, picked up her bicycle, and continued home. She did not think again about the old man that night. She was too tired to think about anything beyond the 17 steps from her door to her mattress. She was asleep before 11 minutes had passed. She had no idea that the old man had not been simply an old man. And she had no idea that by the next morning, her entire life was about to turn in a direction she had never once allowed herself to imagine. Stay with me. Adi's MBA was 24 years old and she was losing the race. Not dramatically. Not in a way that made people stop and notice. She was losing the quiet, daily kind of race, the one where you work as hard as you possibly can and still find yourself falling behind by small, relentless increments. She had grown up in Onitsha, the second of 4 children. Her father had been a secondary school teacher. Her mother had sold fabric in the market. Between them, her parents had managed to give their children education and values and very little else. Adis had finished secondary school with excellent results and no money for university. She had applied for every scholarship she could find. She had gotten through 2 rounds of a federal scholarship only to be disqualified on a technicality that she still did not fully understand. She had come to Lagos at 21 with a bag and a contact, a distant cousin who let her sleep on his couch for 2 months before she found a room she could afford in Mushin. She had tried 3 jobs before the delivery work. A shop assistant position that paid less than the bus fare to get there. A receptionist role at a small company that had folded after 3 months without paying her last salary. A data entry job with an agency that had turned out to be something she could not in good conscience continue once she understood what they were actually doing. Then she had found the delivery platform. It was hard work. Harder than she had expected. The app tracked everything: your speed, your punctuality, your customer ratings. One bad review could affect your earnings for a week. One late delivery, even when traffic was the reason, even when nobody could have arrived on time, meant a penalty that came straight off your earnings. She had been doing it for 11 months. She was good at it. Reliable. Her customer ratings were high. She knew the roads of Lagos with a precision that impressed people who had lived there twice as long. But the money was never enough. Her rent was 12,000 naira a month for a single room she shared with another woman, a market trader named Mama Kike, who snored loudly but had a kind heart and sometimes left food covered on the table for when Adiz came home late. After rent. After transport. After the occasional repair when her bicycle gave trouble. After the money she sent home to her mother every month without fail, even when sending it meant she would eat less. After all of that, she lived in the narrow space between surviving and not surviving. She did not complain. She had been raised not to complain. She simply worked harder and trusted that eventually the numbers would change. They had not changed yet. What kept her going, beyond stubbornness and responsibility, was a dream she barely let herself speak out loud. She wanted to study logistics and supply chain management. Not because it was glamorous. Because she had spent 11 months watching how delivery systems worked, watching where they failed, watching how products moved or failed to move across the chaos of Lagos, and she could see, with a clarity that surprised her sometimes, exactly how things could be done better. She had ideas. Real ideas. She wrote them in a small notebook she kept under her mattress. Ideas about routing efficiency. About how a community-based micro-hub system could cut last-mile delivery costs by nearly 40% in dense urban areas. She did not know who to show these ideas to. She did not know if they were worth anything. She just kept writing them down, because writing them felt like keeping a promise to a future version of herself she was not yet sure she would become. His name was Chief Emmanuel Obinwosu. 73 years old. Founder and majority chairman of Obi Logics Group, one of the largest logistics and supply chain companies in West Africa. Operations in 7 countries. A workforce of over 9,000 people. Annual revenue that most people would find difficult to comprehend. He was also, in a way that most of his employees and board members did not know, deeply restless. He had built his company from a single truck he had borrowed money to lease at 31 years old. He had driven that truck himself for 2 years, every delivery, every road, every night shift, until he could afford to hire a driver. Then 2 drivers. Then 10. He had built the business through 40 years of decisions, relationships, reinventions, and more than anything else, an understanding of people that he had developed through a lifetime of watching closely. But lately, something bothered him. The company had grown large. The people at the top, his executives, his senior managers, were talented, educated, well compensated. But he had noticed something. They had lost the ground. They made decisions about delivery workers, about platform fees, about penalty structures, without ever having experienced what those decisions felt like to the people they affected. He remembered the nights he had spent in his truck, exhausted, counting coins. He remembered the specific weight of a day that had produced less than expected despite maximum effort. He was not sure his senior staff could imagine that weight anymore. And so, as he sometimes did quietly, without announcement, without his driver or his security detail, Chief Emmanuel Obinwosu had put on old clothes and gone to sea. He had been on the streets for 3 days. Watching. Observing. Sitting in places where he was invisible to the world he usually occupied. He had seen many things. But the girl on the bicycle was the one he could not stop thinking about. Adiz's alarm went off at 5:45. She had slept for less than 6 hours. She sat up in the dark, found her phone, and opened the delivery app to check her morning queue. There was a notification she did not recognize. Not from the delivery platform. A different notification. A message, forwarded from her profile page on the platform. Asterisk, my name is Emmanuel. You sat with me last night on Ifelodon Street. I would like to meet with you today if you are willing. Please call this number when you wake. It is important. Asterisk. Adiz stared at the screen. She read it 3 times. The old man. She felt a small flutter of concern. Had something happened? Was he unwell? Did he need help? She did not think beyond that. She called the number. It rang twice. Good morning, Adiz. The voice was the same one. Old, quiet, clear. But something about hearing it through a phone, in the context of a formal-sounding message, made her uncertain in a way the dark roadside had not. Good morning, sir, she said carefully. Are you all right? Is something wrong? Nothing is wrong, he said. In fact, something is very right. Can you come and see me today? I will send you an address. I have deliveries from 7, she said. I can't miss them. I understand, he said. My office opens at 9. I will be there all day. Come whenever you are free. Office, she thought. Sir, what is the address of your office? He told her. She typed it into her phone and then Googled it, the way you do when something doesn't quite make sense. Obi Logics Group. Corporate Headquarters. Victoria Island, Lagos. She sat on her mattress in the early morning dark and looked at the name on her screen. She knew that name. Every person who worked in logistics and delivery in Lagos knew that name. She looked at the message again. She looked at the address again. She got dressed for her deliveries with her mind moving in a direction she could not yet follow. She finished her morning deliveries by 11:30. She went home. She had no office clothes, not really. She had one good dress, kept for church. She put it on, pressed as best she could, and looked at herself in the small mirror Mama Kite kept on the wall. Delivery girl. Worn shoes. Church dress. Helmet hair she did not have product to fix. She looked at herself honestly. Then she stood up straight, picked up her bag, and walked out. The Obi Logics building was 40 floors of glass and steel in Victoria Island. The lobby had a floor that reflected the ceiling. Staff in matching uniforms moved with purpose. Screens on the wall showed logistics data in real time. The air smelled expensive in a way she could not describe. She walked to the reception desk. My name is Adiz MBA, she said steadily. I have an appointment with Chief Emmanuel. The receptionist, young, polished, professionally friendly, looked at her screen. Something crossed her face. Not unkindness. Surprise. Yes, she said, after a pause. You're expected. Please take a seat. His PA will come for you. Adiz sat on a leather chair and kept her hands folded in her lap. People passed through the lobby. Everyone looked purposeful. Everyone looked like they belonged here. She thought about her notebook under the mattress. She thought about the routing efficiency idea she had written last week. She thought about the old man on the street corner with his folded paper bag. The PA who came for her was a composed woman named Mrs. Uju, who walked briskly and spoke efficiently and looked at Adiz with an expression of carefully professional neutrality. They rode the elevator to the 38th floor in silence. The elevator doors opened onto a different kind of space entirely. Quieter. A long corridor. Wood panels and soft carpet. The weight of decisions made here. Mrs. Uju knocked on a door at the end of the corridor. Come, said the voice. She opened it. Miss Adiz MBA, sir. And there he was. Not against a wall in borrowed clothes in the dark. Behind an enormous desk, in a room that looked out over Lagos in every direction, in a suit that had clearly been made specifically for him. The same face. The same clear, kind eyes. Chief Emmanuel Obinwosu. Adiz, he said warmly. Please sit down. She sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. You know who I am now, he said. Yes, sir, she said. And you came anyway. You asked me to, sir. He looked at her with the expression of a man confirming something he had already decided. Most people, when they found out where that address led, would have spent the morning planning what to say. Preparing a performance. Calculating what they wanted from the meeting. I don't know what you want from this meeting, she said honestly. So I didn't know what to prepare. He nodded slowly. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. He asked her questions for 45 minutes. Not the questions she expected. Not questions about her family background or her education certificates or what she could bring to a company. He asked about her deliveries. About the roads she used and why. About which parts of the platform system frustrated her most and why. About what she would change if she could change anything. She answered honestly. Sometimes too honestly, she caught herself mid-sentence once, saying something critical about the company's penalty structure, and faltered. Don't stop, he said. I want to hear it. She continued. She told him about the penalty system that punished drivers for delays caused by traffic rather than driver error. She told him about the routing algorithm that regularly sent drivers through roads that were faster on a map but slower in reality because it didn't account for time-of-day traffic patterns. She told him about the fuel deductions that came out of driver earnings without transparency in how they were calculated. He listened to all of it without interrupting. Then he said, "What would you do differently?" She hesitated. "Please," he said. "I'm asking sincerely." She reached into her bag. She pulled out the notebook. She had brought it without planning to. She had put it in her bag that morning almost automatically, the way you carry a thing that is part of you. She set it on the desk. "I've been writing things down," she said. "Ideas. About the routing. About a different penalty model. About something I call a micro-hub system." She paused. "They might be wrong. I don't have a logistics degree. I've just been watching things work and not work for 11 months. He reached across and opened the notebook. He read in silence for a very long time. Adiz sat with her hands folded and her heart somewhere in her throat. He turned pages slowly. He went back and reread sections. He made no expression that told her anything. Finally he looked up. "How long have you been writing these?" he said. "Since month 3, she said. When I started noticing patterns." "Who have you shown this to?" "Nobody," she said. "I don't know who to show it to." He looked at her steadily. "This micro-hub concept," he said. Page 14. Where the community collection points reduce last mile distance by 38 to 42% in high-density areas, she said. "Yes. I calculated it across 4 different zones. I know the sample is small but the pattern holds in all 4. He closed the notebook. He was quiet for a moment. "Adiz," he said. "Why didn't you go to university?" "I couldn't afford it," she said simply. "I applied for scholarships. It didn't work out." "What would you study if you could?" "Logistics and supply chain management," she said without hesitation. He looked at her. "Yesterday night," he said. "You were hungry. I could see it. And you gave me your food anyway. Without knowing who I was. Without any possibility of return." She shifted slightly. "You looked like you needed it more." "That's all?" "That's all," she said. He nodded. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Mrs. Uju," he said. "Can you come in?" Mrs. Uju appeared within 90 seconds with a notepad. Chief Emmanuel leaned back in his chair. "I want to make an offer," he said to Adiz. "I want you to understand it clearly, and I want you to take time to think about it before you answer." She nodded. Obilogics has a partnership with 3 universities, one in Lagos, one in Abuja, one in Port Harcourt. We fund a small number of sponsored student positions annually, full scholarships covering tuition, accommodation, and a monthly stipend. The students work with us during their holidays and join us in some capacity after graduation. Adiz was very still. There is one position unfilled for this academic year, he said. Logistics and Supply Chain Management. University of Lagos. The application window closed 2 weeks ago, but I can reopen it for a direct nomination. The room was very quiet. I want to nominate you, he said. Not because you fed me last night. I want to be clear about that. I want to nominate you because what is in this notebook, he placed his hand on it, is better thinking than I have received from several people with degrees on their walls. And because the way you answered my questions this morning tells me that you understand this industry from the inside out in a way that most of my educated staff never will. He paused. The bread was simply how I found you. Adiz looked at him. She felt the thing rising in her chest that she had kept pressed down for years, hope, real hope, the specific kind that hurts because you are afraid to trust it. Why would you do this, she said. For someone you met last night on a street corner? Because 42 years ago, he said, I was loading goods at a warehouse at night, counting whether I could afford to eat, when a man I had never met before stopped and gave me a meal from his own flask. He did not know me. He had nothing to gain. He simply did it. He paused. He is the reason I built a policy in this company that every full-time driver gets a meal allowance, not as a bonus, but as a right. Because of one meal a stranger gave me. He looked at her. I have been waiting a long time to pass that forward in a way that mattered. Adiz looked down at her hands. The church dress. The rubber-banded shoe, she had changed the rubber band for a newer one before she left the house, as if that made a difference. I will need to tell my mother, she said. Her voice was slightly unsteady. Of course, he said. And I will need to think. Take until tomorrow, he said. Call Mrs. Uju with your answer. She nodded. She stood. She reached across and picked up her notebook. Leave it, he said gently. We have a meeting next week with the operations team about the routing algorithm. I would like them to see page 14. She looked at him. She left the notebook. She sat outside the Obilogics building on the steps and called her mother. Her mother answered on the second ring, voice warm, slightly rushed. She was probably in the middle of something at the market. Mama, Adiz said. Something in her voice made her mother stop immediately. What happened? Adiz, what happened? Nothing bad, she said quickly. Mama, I need to tell you something. She told her everything. The old man. The bread. The notebook. The office. The offer. The University of Lagos. Full scholarship. Logistics and supply chain. Her mother was silent for so long that Adiz pulled the phone from her ear to check if the call had dropped. Mama? I am here, her mother said. Her voice was different. Thick. I am here. Mama, don't cry. I am not crying, her mother said, in the voice of a person crying. I am thanking God. I have been thanking God for you for 24 years and she stopped. Gathered herself. Adiz. Yes, Mama. You gave that old man your food. Yes. At 11 at night, when you had not eaten all day. Yes. Because it was the right thing. Yes, Mama. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Go, she said firmly. You go and you study and you learn everything there is to learn, and you come back and you change things. Do you hear me? I hear you, Mama. And Adiz. Yes? This is not luck, her mother said. Luck is something that happens to you. This is who you are. This is what you put into the world coming back to find you. Adiz sat on the steps of the Obilogics building and cried quietly for 2 minutes. Then she wiped her face, straightened her dress, and called Mrs. Uju to give her answer. 6 weeks later, Adiz moved into the university accommodation. A small room with a desk and a window and more space to think than she had had in years. She sat on the bed the first evening and looked around at the walls. Clean walls. Quiet space. A future she could now, for the first time, draw a clear line toward. She unpacked her bag. Her clothes. Her books. At the bottom of the bag, she found the rubber band from her shoe. She held it for a moment. Then she put it in the small drawer of her desk. A reminder of where she had come from. A reminder of the road. Chief Emmanuel visited the university campus 4 months into her first semester. He was there for a meeting with the faculty, but he stopped by the logistics department, where a student presentation was underway. He stood at the back of the room and watched. Adiz stood at the front. She was presenting an expanded version of the microhub concept from her notebook, now with 2 additional months of academic framework behind it, refined by coursework, sharpened by her lecturer's guidance into something more formal and more powerful. She spoke clearly. Confidently. She answered questions from her lecturers without flinching. The chief stood at the back and said nothing. After the presentation, he found her in the corridor. Your microhub model, he said. We are piloting it in 3 zones starting next month. The operations team has been working from page 14. She stared at him. Seriously? Seriously, he said. Early projections suggest 36% cost reduction in those zones. Slightly below your 42 estimate, but closer than anyone expected. She thought about the notebook under her mattress. The ideas she had written in the dark after 14-hour shifts, too tired to be sure they meant anything. I didn't know if any of it was right, she said. That's the difference between where you were and where you're going, he said. Where you were, you had good instincts and no framework to test them. Where you're going, you'll have both. She looked at him. Thank you, she said. For seeing the notebook. Thank you, he said quietly, for the bread. She graduated 3 years later, top of her class. The ObiLogic sponsorship had given her not just an education but access to industry professionals, to real company data, to problems she could practice solving while the learning was still fresh. She had published a paper in her second year on urban last-mile logistics in West African cities that had been cited 11 times before she graduated. Her microhub model had by then been rolled out across 14 zones in Lagos and 3 cities in Ghana. The cost reduction data had exceeded her original projections. Chief Emmanuel attended her graduation in person. He sat in the audience beside her mother, who had traveled from Onitsha in a new wrapper that Adiz had bought her from the scholarship stipend savings she had carefully accumulated. When Adiz walked across the stage to collect her degree, her mother stood up. She was the only parent who stood. Then others stood too, the way people do when one person's joy is too large to be absorbed sitting down. After the ceremony, Chief Emmanuel found her with her mother. He greeted her mother first, formally, with the full respect due to a woman who had raised someone like Adiz. Her mother received it the way she received everything, with quiet dignity and clear eyes. Then he turned to Adiz. The operations director position, he said. The one we discussed in your final year. Yes, she said. It's yours, he said. If you still want it. She looked at her mother. Her mother nodded, once. She turned back to Chief Emmanuel. There's one condition, she said. He raised an eyebrow slightly, the hint of amusement in his expression that she had come to recognize over 3 years. I want the driver welfare program expanded, she said. Better penalty structures. Transparent fuel deductions. Meal allowances for part-time drivers, not just full-time. And I want to oversee it directly. He studied her. You'll be an operations director making platform welfare policy decisions, he said. That's unusual. I know this company from the inside and from the outside, she said. That's what you told me 3 years ago was worth something. It was, he said. It still is. He extended his hand. She shook it. On her first day as operations director, Adiz arrived early. She took the elevator to her new office on the 22nd floor. She set her bag on the desk. She opened the desk drawer and placed one item inside. An old rubber band. Worn. Stretched. The kind that barely holds together. She closed the drawer. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop and began her first day of work. Below her, through the glass, Lagos was waking up. Delivery riders on bicycles. Trucks on morning roads. 9,000 people doing work that moved things from where they were to where they needed to be. She knew exactly what that felt like. She had not forgotten. She was never going to forget. She gave away her last piece of bread in the dark. Not because she expected anything in return, but because she had been raised to give anyway. And the world, slow and imperfect as it is, has a way of finding people like that. And giving them exactly the platform they were always meant to have. The end.